Good morning. Welcome to the February 13th, 2024 Town of Sunset Beach First Budget Planning Session. The mayor is not here today, so I, as Mayor Pro Tem, will be officiating. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First item of business is the planning session. Tara, the floor is yours.
Is this one on? Yeah. Okay. So this morning I thought that we would start with sort of an overview of local government finance. We have done this in the past. It's always good to have a refresher. Do you have the PowerPoint, Alan? Okay. So basically we'll go through the different types of revenues, the fund balance, and where our tax rate is. Also some of the intergovernmental revenues that we have. The first part, one of the biggest things that we look at in local government finance is having a strong fund balance. And why? Why do we focus so much on our fund balance? So on your PowerPoint, you'll see that there's different reasons, starting with cash flow, to avoid short-term borrowing, reserve for emergencies or unforeseen events, or unexpected opportunities that may rise. This can also have the effect of having an increased investment income. And we are rated with our credit rating, and having a higher fund balance helps with our credit rating when we go out, if you were to go out for general obligation bonds.
Is this also called the general fund?
The general fund is...
If it isn't, I'll wait until you get to that.
Yeah, it's not, but we can go over that now. The general fund is the operating account for local government. Okay. So there's the different types of funds. General fund is where the bulk of the activity happens for government financing. So you have a fund balance for each fund. The one that has the most focus is your general fund balance.
Okay.
When you think about fund balance, a lot of people, the easiest way for them to think about fund balance is savings account. It's basically where you hold your money that you're going to use for other things.
But it's not identified specifically for anything except, call it, emergencies.
Correct.
Okay. Where the other funds have a specific purpose.
Yes.
Okay. Or more of a specific purpose.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Having a strong fund balance also avoids the LGC giving any types of warnings.
LGC is?
The Local Government Commission. Yeah. The Local Government Commission, there is a random number out there that's 8%. Nobody ever gets anywhere near 8%. For a town in our circumstance, being near the ocean and being in the way of possible hurricanes and different weather events, the way that the town is set up as far as different, like the property tax rates and things like that, you want to have a higher fund balance due to these possible emergencies and unexpected expenditures.
And we have a guideline for that?
So the guideline for fund balance, like I said, there's an 8% number out there. That's not good for a coastal community.
And that means 8% of what it would cost you to run the town for a year?
It basically means you'd get through 1 month.
Okay.
So when you look at the percentages, we look at it as a percentage of the year. So we right now are sitting around 80%. So 80% of the next year, you'd be able to continue operating, making sure the staff is paid, the bills are paid. and also
So we could
trying
last
to
for
rebuild.
10 months. And if we were frugal during those 10 months, we could probably last for a year.
Correct. Because I mean, in that too, there's capital things. So it's not what our budget is monthly is not all operating. So you would probably last a little bit longer. But that
So-
would be a
So where does this
catastrophe.
figure 75%?
75% is a great number for here. And one of the things that I do recommend to council is us coming together and creating a fund balance policy. Because it is not in writing for Sunset Beach at all.
Well, we've always used the 75% rule
It's
as a
just been-
coastal beach town for emergencies. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
In talking about this, because we're getting ready to go into talking about different funds, but one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about in a recent class that I had taken, they were talking about the capital reserve fund versus the fund balance for the capital needs of a town. And in this, they said that a lot of times finance directors may jump to wanting to have that capital reserve fund, but there's a way to assign your fund balance for capital where you're not tying it specifically to capital. One of the things that we have not done yet is created the resolution to create the capital reserve fund. One of the suggestions that they had was go ahead and assign your fund balance. So you have it in your budget every year. It's assigned separate out of the rest of the fund balance at what it would be right now is $150,000.
But you mean it's an account that doesn't exist and we just kind of put money in a box and wrote on it, but we
It's in the
haven't
audit.
officially done it here yet?
It's a separate fund. So
Yes.
we have different funds here. So if we were to create the capital reserve fund, which is our plan, you do a
I
resolution.
thought we already created it.
No, we just set the money aside for the
That's
fund.
what I mean. We put that money in a box, and we now
We just-
have to
we have to
officially
create the
do
fund.
it. Okay.
Right. But I just wanted to share with you that there's another option if you wanted to go with that option. Right now, if you create the capital reserve fund, you have to use it on capital. If you decide to assign fund balance and have it set aside and it's still earmarked, but it's not 100% restricted, you have more flexibility with it. So you can change it moving forward if you want to, if you want that ability. If you don't want that ability and you 100% want it restricted to capital, then we'll move forward with the resolution to create the capital reserve fund. I just wanted to present that to you as an option. Either way, it's the same thing. One is more set in stone. The other one is a little bit more flexible. This is not something that you have to decide right now, and we can have more discussion about it. If you have questions about it, just let me know.
Is that appropriate to do after we've actually resolved or later on in the budget process?
So
When's the
it's
appropriate time to make that decision?
we need to make it before the end of this fiscal year because we have that money set aside right now to go into a capital reserve fund. We have not transferred that money into a capital reserve fund at this point because it's a resolution and then a capital project ordinance, and that has not been presented to you yet. So it's something that can be changed right now because it's just set aside. It's not actually been completed.
Don't most things that come before us where you want to do a budget amendment, don't they fall into the capital fund? It's like the police chief was talking about his cameras the other night. That's capital.
It's
Fire
right.
engines capital. Police
It would-
cars are capital.
Any individual item that is over $5,000.
But
But
a raise for the finance director is not capital.
no.
Okay.
It's
I'm
not.
trying to
Yeah.
just
Anything personnel is not capital. It's an actual physical item with a $5,000 price ticket or more individually.
So if we need another manhole on 40th Street, that's not capital. That would be part of the stormwater plan,
Right.
and it would not be capital.
Yeah.
One question, if, let's say we establish a resolution this year, and next year we decide, we don't want it, can we rescind it?
You cannot move that money. Once that money is put into a capital reserve fund, it has to stay there.
But we could rescind it and not put any more money in that fund.
You can keep that fund at the $150,000.
Okay.
And then not put anything else in there. But you would have to do separate, you would have to amend capital project ordinances.
Got it.
So
All right.
this money that we set aside, the intention was for the fire truck.
Yeah.
So the way that it will be presented to you is a capital project over years to acquire this fire truck in, I think it's 42 months from the time it was ordered. And so all of that would be specified in there because it has to have a time frame, it has to have a specific purpose, and you can change that, but it has to be another capital item. You can't, like the town can't say, we need money for a different contract or whatever. You can't take that money back.
Lisa, can we bring this up, because I think this is important, can we bring this up as we kind of close out the budget hearings? Because I think fire.
Carol, let's go back now to the capital reserve fund. One you said is more flexible, the other one is not as much flexibility. Which would you recommend that we do? Now, we got time to worry about this, but what would you
Right.
recommend we do off the top of your head?
Well, knowing now that, I mean, we've assigned fund balance for different purposes before.
Yes.
The fire department
Yes.
has their own assigned fund balance because of the fire fees.
Yes.
The inspections department has their own assigned fund balance because of the inspection fees and not covering, I mean, having more revenue than expenditures in that and maintaining that and seeing it's actually not hard to maintain those and having another assigned fund balance. I would recommend it. It gives the council more flexibility as long as you all continue to move forward with that and commit to adding to that every year. It's the budgeting for it is easier. The changing. I mean, you can say that you want to use it for capital, and doing a budget amendment would be just like you see now. Instead of a capital project ordinance, it would be a budget amendment with assigned fund balance for capital.
All right.
And so instead of where it says appropriated fund balance, that's like the general fund balance. You wouldn't take away from that general fund balance. You would only take away from what you have assigned.
Okay, thank you.
Because assigned is not so restricted. And you can also decide to go away from that in the future if you want to.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so the different funds that we have. I'm not moving. Okay. So in Sunset Beach, the funds that we have right now are the general fund, the Powell Bill Fund, the Sunset Fund, the Accommodation Tax Fund, the Beach Erosion Fund, and the Dredging Fund. So our general fund is where all of our operating occurs. So the individual departments, the salaries, department supplies, the utility bills, all of that, operating and basic capital like cars and things like that all come from the general fund. That's where we have our main focus when we're talking about the budget. So Powell Bill Fund is the money that we get for town-owned streets. And in the past with that, we've sort of looked at what our revenue is coming in at and just basically budget where our revenue is at. We're still well underneath the threshold. If you hit 10 years of Powell Bill revenue and do not spend it, they'll stop giving you the money. We're at about 3 years right now. So we're still well within being able to save up that money. It's just something that we definitely need to keep an eye on.
I had a
So
note.
this is state money that's provided to us.
Yes, this is restricted
Okay.
to
It's gas
street
tax.
paving.
And it's state money that comes to it.
Yes.
And we do not have to spend it each year. That's what
Correct.
you're saying. You can
Yeah.
build it up.
Yeah.
So we don't have to pave roads every year. A lot of the things we use now is for paving the roads.
Correct.
And we don't have to do that each year. We can build up till we have a
Correct.
more efficient project, more roads,
Yeah. Once
less companies, less
they
bids.
send you a letter every year
Yeah.
or send us a letter every year stating you are at this many years, and within the next few years, you need to start spending this money, or we're going to stop sending it to you. But we're not close to that right
I have
now.
a note that we have about $160,000 balance in that fund right now. Is off the top of your head, can you confirm that?
It's higher than that. The fund
Okay.
balance in that is higher than that.
I mean, is it $1 million? Is it?
No, I want to say
I know
it's
it wasn't.
around 400,000.
Wow. Okay. But we also have an awful lot of roads with development that we're fixing, as opposed to just we had a paving program before where we'd take like 8 streets and do maintenance to them every year, not
Correct.
repaving, not paving streets that were stone. But 400,000, that's awesome.
We,
Goes very quickly.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Terry,
That-
have we in the past few years, have we taken money from taxpayer to help fund this Powell bill at times? Do we use taxpayer money, or do we just stick with the state money to do what we need to do when we can do it?
So the practice in Sunset Beach, like we were saying, the money paving went up significantly, the cost.
True.
So we've been doing small repairs that have not necessarily come out of Powell bill on different streets.
Okay.
And in the past, before honestly 2020, when the cost of the paving skyrocketed, we were doing a couple streets or sections of streets, and we were basically taking half and half because the Powell bill money wasn't covering the entire cost. And so we kind of did like a grant would, like a 50-50 match, where we would budget money in the street department and then match that budget in the Powell bill fund. And it sort of makes it last longer. It's sort of how like you would look at a grant, and that was how we were moving forward with those projects.
I have a question.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. You want to finish?
I was just going to say that the Powell bill will never cover the entire cost of paving.
Okay, that's a good point.
If we have a big storm and lose some town roads, would that come from the Powell bill?
So if it's a hurricane, so to say, that came through and we had catastrophic, we lost the road section, the first thing that we would do would be to file with FEMA. And so we would pay it out of general fund so that we could get the most money back from a FEMA claim that we possibly could do. So I would say that probably you wouldn't use Powell bill, because then you're using state money and it might cloud the FEMA claim.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So FEMA
sense.
first, we finish that, then we use the Powell bill.
Yes, after
Augmented
you
by
finish,
our budget as needed.
Yeah.
Yep.
because things like that, once it gets to that level, FEMA is going to step in. There are times, I mean, if it's not significant enough of an event, FEMA may not help. But if you've lost roads, that's going to be a significant enough event for FEMA to come in and
If there was a
Actually,
state of
no.
emergency called, and if there was significant damage,
Right.
the door would open to requesting FEMA
correct.
funds.
Yeah.
Can I ask the question about the general fund? I'm curious as to amounts that are in it. I was led to believe we had about $8 million in the general fund.
In the fund balance,
Uh,
so
okay, whatever you want to call it, yes.
we
Yes.
this year we had budgeted $10 million for the actual general fund budget.
Yes.
In the fund balance, I
Okay.
don't have the audit in front of me, but at the audit time we were at around 68%, I think it was.
Okay.
But since then we got the grant money that has come in, and that will bring us up to around 80%. So
Okay. So
yeah,
the
it's
$8
probably
million
around
number
8
is-
million. Some of
okay.
it's restricted.
I know.
So fund balance has different levels of what's available to
And when
you.
you say restricted, it's like for the dredging program and things like that.
So the dredging program's actually in a separate
Separate
fund.
Never mind. Never mind. Never mind.
So as we move through this budget process, you're going to give us updates on what the status is of
Yeah.
all of these funds,
Yeah.
in March and April, thereabouts or so.
Yes. Yes.
And with that, the goals that we have for the next fiscal year for
Yeah.
those funds. Okay.
Um, I will say that in the fund balance, there's a state requirement of restricted fund balance that you also, in the audit, it shows that is a significant amount. So it looks, sometimes in the audit, it'll look like this really big number, like
But it's a lot of it's
$15
restricted.
million,
Yeah.
but it's not actually available.
I know. Thank you.
So then we have this Sunset at Sunset fund, and that is just for Sunset at Sunset. So all of the fees that come in for the booths or sponsorships, they stay tightly neat in that package of just being for Sunset at Sunset. And they do have a fund balance. Their fund balance, I believe, is around 20,000. Give or take. And then the
And the town oversees Sunset at Sunset people expending funds.
nobody but town staff expends funds as for any type of thing like that. So there's a budget. So you all, when we go through this, there's a budget that's set. We sort of treat it as a department, but it is a separate fund. When the ordinance comes through, you see it's listed as a separate fund. It has like a supply line and a contract line, things like that. So it's like tents and chairs and advertising. It's broken down, but their typical budget is it's right around what their fund balance is. So
Thank you.
Good.
I have a question. When Sunset at Sunset first started, did the town give them seed money?
like as a donation to the fund,
Well,
I mean,
to
the
help
money.
it get going.
So I don't think so, but I don't know. I would have to go back through the budgets to look and see how that fund was started. But any money that's in that fund is actually the town's money.
Right.
So even if the town had started that with some money to get to funds to get that going, once it was a department or a town event, it's still in the town's money. So I'm not sure. Do you know? Yeah. I would have to look back through at the previous budgets and see how that was set up and if there was any notes with it. But everything that has come in has stayed in that fund.
I think
So
Sunset at Sunset started in 2008, 2009.
2009, yes. I think it was. It was over here in the parking lot of the gazebo because we attended it,
Yeah.
Correct.
sitting on the curb.
It's grown a bit.
The accommodation tax fund is actually one of our funds that does not have a fund balance. So due to the way that our legislation is for Sunset Beach, we get the 6%, and I have this broken down later on as well. We get 6%, we give 1% to the county, 2% goes into the next fund that I'll be talking about, which is the Beach Erosion Fund. And then 3% stays in the accommodation tax fund. But we have the ability to make a transfer into general fund because of the way that our legislation is written. And I'll get into that.
We're
more
lucky
specific.
to be able to do that.
Mhm.
We're fortunate to be able to do
We
that.
are. We did not change rates or anything like that that would upset our legislation. So we are fortunate.
Because
to
other
keep it that
towns
way.
aren't as fortunate, I've heard.
Yeah, there are some towns that decided to go with a TDA, which is a tourism
Development agency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so because they did that, they have less control over the money, and it doesn't come into general fund. It goes into the TDA.
Could
And,
you,
and money that's left over there, we can do with what we choose at the end of the fiscal year.
Yes, because it has to be for specific purposes, but our specific purposes well out expend what that transfer would be.
Okay. Sorry,
Could you
Mike.
quickly read over those percentages you said that go?
Yes, there's actually a spot in here that we're going to go through that
Fine.
more specific to. So
Two,
that's good.
231.
The beach erosion fund, like I said, is the 2%. That the only thing that Sunset Beach really at this point is able to use that on is the beach accesses. If we were losing beachfront, you could use it to rebuild the beach. But I think we're still gaining sand. So, and then we have the dredging fund, which stands alone. And
Beach erosion fund cannot be used at will, though. It has to be for beach erosion.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, you
Unlike
cannot transfer anything
accommodations.
out of it, or it actually has to. It's restricted and has to be spent on the allowable expenditures for that account.
And when you
Yes.
reference that there's no fund balance in the accommodations tax, is that because each month or each quarter we get a pile of money that gets deposited in because people stay on our beach and stay at Sea Trail? And
So it's an annual during as I prepare the journal entries for year end. It's one of the journal entries that after June 30th, well, it's actually a little bit after that because we don't get the money for June until the end of July. But once we have all the money for June, then I know what all the expenditures are, what the revenues came in at, and then we know what is left over, which would have been in a fund balance for that fund. We're allowed to transfer that amount into general fund, and it's done through a journal voucher with the audit.
okay, thank you.
Now, could we use it for other things to support the beach? I know you use the word only, but like if we wanted to put showers at the end of beaches or bathrooms,
Or
I don't believe
walkways.
so.
well, they're good for the access ways, right?
The beach access
Yes.
is because it gains you access to the
Yeah,
beach.
to the beach. We can use the beach erosion
I thought
fund
you
for
meant
the
emergency access.
for the access ways, but not for putting facilities there for
I-
people who go to the beach.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Then we have the dredging fund, which is basically a capital project fund. So if we were to not do any dredging after this and this was going to completely end, then the dredging fund would be closed. But due to having the maintenance going forward and things like that, this will stay open and you'll be able to really be able to account for the money that's brought in for dredging.
Just as a question on format of dredging, and I know the rest of the council is already aware of this, but Mike Posdell and I are a little bit new. We get money from the state in our, used to be 66%, now it's 75% reimbursement through their participation in our dredging program. But I would assume that up front, we have to pay for it to go on. And then we get, and as the money comes back in, our funds are then replenished. So the town is really, I don't want to say financing, but at least underwriting the dredging program. But we get reimbursed for that by the state, 75% now. And then the people that are actually paying for the dredging, that front the dredging program, as they pay their from the dredging, what do we call it? A dredging, there's a word for it.
special assessment.
Special assessment. That then we put back into our general fund.
That does not happen until the dredging is completed, the cost have been evaluated in the assessment. So during this time of, correct me if I'm wrong, of doing the dredging, the 1/4, previously 1/3 that the affected residents are responsible for was being paid by the town and put into, and the town will get that money back at the end of the project.
So the
Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, I think you did.
yes. The way that it was set up was there is the dredging fund, everything's expended out of the dredging fund. Initially, and as the grants have changed and the project has morphed, there's been transfers from general fund into the dredging fund. So it's not sitting in the general fund. It's not messing with our numbers for the general fund or anything like that right now. It's completely set aside. And yes, it is right now coming out of any kind of revenue that the town has brought in, whether it be intergovernmental or property tax or sales tax or whatever. It's been transferred into the dredging fund. And so it is paid down through that and then reimbursed, and all of that is staying in the dredging fund right now. When we have the exact amount, as Mr. Corbett said, then we will do the special assessments, but that money will then be revenued into the general fund.
To replace it.
Mhm.
And if the people don't pay on day one, there's an interest charge to the benefactors of the dredging program.
The affected properties.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because we're all benefactors.
We changed that to 3%.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Per-
Thank
per
you.
year.
Thank you. I asked the question for me, but also for
Oh, yeah.
you two, because there's a lot of people that the phones will ring, and excellent
Yes.
answer. Thank you.
Well, I think a lot of the questions we ask now are mostly so people watching. These are questions we think they're going to have, so we want to put the answers out there.
Thank you.
So I have not thinking of. Okay. So as these are the different types of revenues that we have, and I'm going to go through each of these specifically in the next slides, but this is a basic list of what we do have. On the next page, you'll see the actuals for 22-23. I have year-to-date numbers for 23-24, but this is our last full year to have as a reference. One of the things that stands out to me that is a little different for 22-23 on this, you'll see non-recurring revenues. That was because we financed the park. So we financed $1.5 million to purchase Majestic Oak. And so it throws the numbers off a little bit, and it looks like non-recurring revenues, which is why it changes the percentages some, but this is the last, and that can happen in any year.
Well, I'm glad you explained that, because there's significant grant money that will be coming in to replace that.
Right. And so on that, and even with the grant money is also a non-recurring revenue. So you can't budget for it because it's not a guarantee every year. You don't necessarily know what grant money you're going to get. So for this last budget that we had, this last actual fiscal year that we had in 22-23, our revenues came in at $12,022,000 and some change. And this is where our percentages fell for that. So this was prior to our reval as well. And so it shows our property taxes being at 24%, and that was extremely low. Property taxes are your most reliable source of income and should be somewhere between 40 and 50%. We corrected that in 23-24 for percentage wise. Are there any questions about the percentages?
Okay. Say that bit again, what they should be and why.
40 to 50%. And it's because it's your most reliable source of income for revenue for the town. Everything else is very variable and unreliable.
When you say everything else, can I assume that you mean accommodations tax, you mean sales tax, you mean things that we can't really rely on because they're not predictable?
Correct.
Okay.
So our percentages for property tax are really good here, and so we can budget within a very small margin. It's around 98% of property taxes that we actually collect every year, which is really good for a town. And then the motor vehicle taxes, which is another reliable source. It can change, but our percentage of collection is high, but it's not a very significant revenue. I think it's $140,000 for 22-23.
And you don't include fire fees in that?
Fire fees are reliable, but fire fees
Yes.
have to be spent on the fire
I know,
department.
but that is a reliable
Yes.
source. Can I say that everything on my Brunswick County tax bill is a reliable,
Yes.
which all of those that you mentioned are?
Mm-hmm.
Cars, fire fees, tax,
Yeah.
town
So
tax, county tax.
those are, I don't want to say guaranteed, but
Only
more.
if you pay them.
Yeah.
But we have a 98% pay rate,
98%.
which is,
Yeah, no, I
which is
know
great.
that. But I was
Yes.
speaking about you. You
I
You
thought
said
that came with
specific.
this.
Are there any other
Ter-
questions
Ter-
about how our percentages break down?
Terry,
Yes.
you said that the state wants us to have a 40 to 50%.
Not necessarily the
Text.
state, but I attend like school of government classes.
Okay.
And I'm subscribed to multiple blogs for local government finance for North Carolina, and everything that they teach you is between 40 and 50%.
Okay. And that's what scared us last year, remember?
Right.
Because it was down below that.
Right. So for
And-
22-23, we were at 24%.
Okay, 24%. That's what scared us, remember? And then we tried to make adjustments to bring that up. And you said it has come up.
Yes.
What are we looking at now? What project? Just,
I think it's 44%.
wow,
Awesome. That's perfect.
that is fantastic.
So on the next page,
That was one of our
I actually
goals.
did do that. Right.
That was one of our goals in budgeting last year, to bring this upward somewhere around.
It
where
brings your
should be.
budget more reliable.
Yes.
And so if other things fall off or decrease, you're not as susceptible to having
Default.
issues. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. That was
So I kind of went over this a little bit. Ad valorem's revenue that we do have control over. That's part of being the reliable part is that we have control. You as a town council set the rate, and collections are done through the county, but they do a really great job of keeping me informed of where our property values lie, which I think we've already gotten started with some of those projections already for this year, which is super early, which is wonderful. And as I said, 44% for 23-24, that's a significant increase, which is really good for budgeting purposes and auditing purposes.
I'll make a comment too, and you know what I'm going to say. If we look at the way that accommodations and sales tax have been trending,
Yes.
they are not It used to be that they were going up, trending high. They are not trending high anymore. They're at a level. Some of them are less
Yes.
than they were last year. But so as we call them unreliable or less reliable sources of revenue,
Right.
it's a good thing that we aren't relying on them.
One of the things that has always been my philosophy with local government budgeting is being conservative. And so I'm not going to budget accommodation tax at what it was the year before, especially if it looks like it's trending at that way. So we came in above what we expected accommodation tax to be last year, because I'm not ever going to bring it up to what the last year was, because you have to be conservative with those unreliable sources. And so with being conservative in that, it also protects the town.
So 2 points there. What that means is looking at the end of fiscal 22 to 23 is we ended up with 431,000 in our accommodation tax that did not get used, that we
Correct.
transferred into our general fund.
Yes.
Okay, that was number one. But number two is basically the trend is, much to our surprise, when COVID hit in 2020, the occupancy went way up. And by 2022, it had sort of peaked, and now since then it has stabilized, and it's fairly balanced since then.
It's very much staying steady.
Yeah.
Some of the like with as I was going through and looking at the different people that provide the software for us to watch it, one of the warnings that I kept hearing was that that's going to start coming down some. That Sunset Beach looks like people are moving here more permanently, and so it's
They're
something
not
to
renting their
watch.
houses anymore. They're
Right.
moving into their second home as a full-time residence.
Correct. Which, I mean, it can change, it can be fluent, but it's definitely something that we have to watch as we go into budget.
Is this the program that we contracted for to try to track and identify those houses that are rented through
Compliance.
the internet?
Yes.
And how is that working?
So they've had some internal issues, and we have been we lost our representative that was helping me get everything built up. I have included Miss England in the emails and basically have told them how unhappy I am with the changes in staff. So we are moving forward with it. We are pushing as hard as we can. I'm not sure what happened with their staffing there, but they've assured me that we're going to move full steam ahead now.
So what is moving full steam ahead? Is it
Getting documents, getting it online, programming. I have a call with them.
So is it working yet? Are we getting any?
It is not up and running at this point.
And this
We are
has
hoping for
been-
April.
Been 1 year, or
Yeah, we did it for 1 year.
we did it for 1 year?
Hmm.
Okay.
And got nothing,
Yeah.
and got nothing.
Oh no!
Yeah.
I mean, we knew that it was going to take up to March to get it up. I mean, there's a lot of upfront work that has to be put into it to get the programming done for the software. The programming has been a little bit of a hiccup for us, but we're pushing forward with it. So I'm hoping for April.
Okay. Thank you.
That would only be a 1 month delay from where you thought it would be.
Yes, that's
Okay.
and
Thank you.
I'm pushing.
And all of that comes together when we renegotiate the contract if we choose to do it later. That's
Right.
that's
Yes.
data points.
Right.
Okay.
Mhm. That's right.
So this is just for informational. A lot of times when you look at a tax bill, it's looks like this a significant amount, and it looks like Sunset Beach is getting all of this money. Well, Sunset Beach is not getting the entire tax bill. If you have a $400,000 home, as far as the taxes, this isn't. I didn't put the fire fees on here, so there is a separate fire fee. But of the $2,008 that you would pay in taxes on a $400,000 home, Sunset Beach gets $640 of that. The rest of it goes to the county. So the county would get $1,368 of the tax bill.
And that would consist of our 16 cent per $100 tax ad valorem tax rate.
Correct.
It would include automobiles.
No,
No?
that's not.
Okay,
This
all right,
is just the
okay.
property tax section
All
of
right,
it.
got it. That's
Yeah.
fine. Thanks.
And so of that property tax, we get 32% of the property taxes.
At what point will we get an idea of what the county is planning to do on their tax rate? You know, we
With
didn't
it
get it
not-
last year until almost June 30th.
Yeah, with it, especially with it not being a reval year, that your property values are not going to change this year, we probably won't know what the county is going to do unless we attended their meetings and they talked about it in the public meeting. They don't typically share a lot of that information. Last year it was very publicized due to the reval. So I can't really give you a timing other than my guess would be not until May that they would come out and start talking about that. Because that would be more of knowing where they are in their budget and if they have to adjust the tax rate. So one of the other things that we get is the county fire fees. As I said, the fire fees can only be used for the fire department. We try to keep that just operating costs for the fire department by fire fees. So the fire fees, the increases that we've seen have not been due to rate increases, but an increase in homes. And the fire fees are calculated by the size of your home.
It's based on the square footage footprint of your business or of your home. Even vacant lots
Even
do
vacant
pay it,
lots.
but they pay it at a much reduced
Lower.
rate
Yes,
because the chance of a fire is a lot less.
correct.
I think it's interesting. It would be interesting to our folks to understand that our fire department, fire district that they cover is about half Sunset Beach municipality, and on a square footage basis or a acreage basis, represented by again that size area outside of our municipality. But all of those people pay a fire fee, and they pay it at the same rate based upon square footage.
Yeah. I think it in here from talking to the fire department, I believe it can go up to 6 miles from each fire station.
That's what they look at for the area you're
The
covered. And then the
district.
county decides where those boundaries are going to be drawn
Right.
based upon where another fire department may or may not be located and their ability to respond to commercial structures and things like that.
One of the things I've done in the past is actually shown what we brought in within city limits and what was outside of city limits. I haven't done that in a couple of years, but if that's something that council wanted to see,
That's
I
a
could
useful
do
number
that.
to put in there,
Okay.
especially with all the building and development going on, being able to tell us at least what kind of fire fees we are going to get. And within that 6 mile area, then just about anything being built in our extraterritorial jurisdiction, ETJ, while we don't get their property taxes, we do get their fire fees, which goes into supporting our fire
I
department.
believe in the end of this month or the beginning of March, the county sends us our projection with the collection rate assigned to it. And so that's one of the first revenues that we know what it's going to be as we go into budget. I'll call Richard today and see what the status is. He usually knows.
We have a fire fee board meeting. This is February. I think it is March.
Yeah, it's usually
beginning
right
of
after that
March.
meeting
Yeah.
that I get the projections from the county, and he usually forwards them to me right away.
Good.
Let's see. Motor vehicle tax. We've talked about that. It only makes up about 1.2%. This was 22-23 numbers, but it's still going to be right around that same percentage.
Yeah. The state or county manage that?
The county.
County manage it.
And that is not a dedicated fund. That goes into our general fund.
Correct.
It doesn't have to be used on something
No.
like streets or something that have to do with a motor vehicle.
Yeah, it's lumped in there right with the property taxes type thing.
One addition going back on property taxes, just the county also does that.
Correct.
So we are not responsible with the burden of doing the tax collection. Is
The
that
past
correct?
due, the past due collections that we would reach out to the county to assist with the past due collections. But as far as the actual collection of the bulk of our taxes, no, it's not our responsibility. It's a small fee.
Thank you.
So another one of our significant sources of revenue is our sales and use tax. So the way that the sales and use tax works, a lot of people think that the more people spend in Sunset Beach, the more money that Sunset Beach gets. And that's not actually true. As long as they're in Brunswick County, that's how it's determined. So the county levies the sales tax. And so when you pay sales tax, you pay 6.75. The state keeps the 4.75%. And then the 2% goes to the county. I think it usually ends up being around 1.5% after the fees and things like that come off of it. And then on an annual basis, the county commissioners decide what their allocation method will be. They can change how they allocate to the towns. So they get the lump sum of money from the state, and then it is allocated to the different municipalities per their method. Right now, we're on the per capita method. And if they decided to change their method, we would lose 28% of our sales and tax revenue immediately. But there was legislation that did pass that they can't do it 2 months before the budget. It would have to go into the next year. So that it used to be that they could change the allocation in March or April, and it would start July 1. But that has been extended. They cannot do that anymore. But you only have 1 year to figure it out.
But they could change their method at will. In other words, instead of on a per capita basis, they could say that rural communities have a greater need, so we're going to give beach towns that are more dense, we're going to give them less money.
So it would be based, if it's not done on the per capita, it would be based on your revenue.
Okay.
on your property tax. So on the second page, you can see where we're per capita versus our property tax revenue. Oh,
When you,
Whoa.
I got way behind. So when you break this down, right now we're at 1.9125%. It would go to 1.3, it's ad valorem method is what they call it, 1.3727%.
That's a huge drop.
And it is a huge drop. It would mean more money for the county.
Okay, so you're looking at all this chart all the way down to Sunset Beach.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
that's
then-
right. You jumped to the,
Okay, and so how about talking us through what are these? What is the
John, I have a
4,000,
question before you get
465?
there.
Sure.
Is the per capita included the people who live in the ETJs?
No,
Just,
in the city limits.
oh, I'm sorry.
So what was the
So the question, you've got these columns in yellow.
yes? So that is per capita. So that is the population in the first column.
Okay,
And that's today.
population.
I didn't realize that it cut off the titles, the column
Okay.
titles.
But that's today. That's the way it is now.
Right now, this
That's what the
this is
county thinks we have.
December, I believe, that
Yeah.
I pulled.
Yeah.
So it shows that our population in from the county is 4,465, and our ad valorem revenue is $2,952,211. So it would be based off of the percentage as compared to the other towns as far as their ad valorem revenue.
Population is based, correct me if I'm wrong, is based upon full-time residents.
Yes.
Not exploding in the summertime to
Correct.
triple your population.
It has to be full-time residents.
So if somebody owns a second home and it's a beach house it's a place in Sea Trail, that is not a head count then
no,
for sales
so
tax.
if they, however they answer the census. So
Okay.
if they answer the census that they live in Sunset Beach, then they would be included. But most people that have a second home in Sunset Beach, their census is somewhere else.
Because they'd like to vote somewhere else too. But
Right.
Well, that's there where you explain to them that their vote is one out of roughly 4,500 people in Sunset Beach versus one out of 250,000 in a major metropolitan area. So your vote carries much more weight here in Sunset Beach.
Well, I'll tell you, Leland really has got a fat hog here. It's $10 million.
Yeah, so that's their ad valorem revenue.
Or just sales tax.
No, that's not sale. That's your property tax
Real estate.
revenue. Ad valorem is your property tax revenue.
Okay.
Okay.
So they base their allocation. If they were to change, it would. So if you lower your tax rate, if they use that method, and you lowered your tax rate, you would in turn get less sales tax.
Yeah.
But they don't use that method now. So right now that doesn't affect it. Right now they use per capita. This is just showing changes that could potentially happen if the county so choose to change that.
Yeah.
And the reason they would change it is because they could get a significant amount more money.
One more chart clarification. The top line says Brunswick County per capita is 152,000. Right?
That's their population outside of municipalities.
And then it says there's 233,000 in the county.
The bottom line would
Yeah.
be
Total.
population in the county plus all of the towns.
That doesn't sound right. Doesn't almost everybody say the population of the county is 152,000?
And then the
roughly?
population of all the other municipalities like Sunset Beach is
is included in the population of the
80,000.
county.
no.
I mean, we don't have the county doesn't have 233,000 people in it.
So the 233 is the people that do not live in a city limit plus the people that live in a city limit.
Okay, I understand that from the
Oh.
chart.
You just don't think there's 200.
I've never heard anything coming in from the county or any of the statistics that have used that number. Okay.
I don't know that.
So the question is check the county population number, I think. That's all.
Yeah.
Okay.
So some of the other revenues that we get that we also do not have control over are utility sales tax, beer and wine, the solid waste disposal, ABC local, and ABC law enforcement. The way that I project these revenues, I look at the past 3 to 4 years and what our trending is, and then the League of Municipalities puts out a report in hopefully usually the end of March. And I take both of those together and look at them, and they look at it on a more statewide. And so, state in conjunction with what our trending is, that's how we project these revenues. Some of them are pretty small. But like the utility sales tax, it generates probably $400,000 to $500,000. So then we have permits and fees. We do have some control over this, but they're sensitive to economic changes. So if people are building a lot of homes, our building inspection fees are much higher.
But don't building inspection fees have to be spent
They are
in the
spent.
building inspection
Yes.
department?
They do. And we have an assigned fund balance for building inspection fees. So when the building inspections slow down, they can use that to keep their department up to where it needs to be as well. Like if there was a slow year, or
But it
if
is
they needed a new
restricted.
truck or something like that.
It is restricted though.
It is restricted.
And that is for salaries also.
It can be used anything that's in the building inspections department. It can be salaries, it can be operating costs.
Do you allocate
Department
the
supply.
utilities in this building, a portion of them for our inspections department?
No, we
because
have
they
not been
have
doing
air
that.
conditioning, and couldn't you do that?
You can do that, but we have that sort of separated right now. But I mean, you can do that. And their department being so small, it wouldn't have much of an impact on that.
Couldn't use the whole thing, have to take a percentage from the number of people.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
It's
You'd have to
prorated
go-
on square footage.
You have to
Yeah.
go through that same type of thing if you run a business office out of your house and to project the area,
Yeah.
that proportion.
And you want to-
So then we also have zoning fees. That's just another thing that's variable. That's not restricted. Hmm. These are service charges. These are specific to the programs. So recycling, the town doesn't make money on recycling. We factor in an administrative fee because it's a large undertaking. It is a lot cheaper for the citizens of Sunset Beach for us to manage the program than it would be for any citizen to go to GFL. And by significant, I mean, they're not going to do a weekly pickup in the summer. That's off the table if we didn't manage the program. It would be biweekly, and it would be approximately $60 to $70 a year more expensive even without that. The beach wheelchair rentals and special events, and then also we have like the different fines and ordinance violations. Those are not very significant, but every little bit helps cover the programs that we do have and cover the fee for compliance and things like that.
Do our violations and fine fees go into general fund? Where does
General fund.
general fund? Okay.
Mhm. And then this is more of the non-recurring, which is a large chunk in 22, 23, and it can be in years to come as well. So going through these, looking at how much revenue we got for non-recurring is significant due to the grants that we go after and having the staff that understands the grants and things like that. So it was 24% of our revenues in 22, 23. That did include the 1.5 million for the loan proceeds for Majestic Oak. But even without that, it's still a significant number. We also had the transfer for the ARP in 22, 23. And if we didn't have this, that would have meant 10.8 cents in taxes for an increase.
For clarification, the ARP was,
1.2,
what is ARP?
the American Rescue Plan.
Okay, that's COVID
COVID
money,
money.
basically, right?
Mhm. And we did revenue replacement for that.
What does that mean?
That means that the state and the federal government gave an amount up to $10 million for municipalities to be able to replace revenue lost without having to calculate actual revenue lost. And so we didn't even come close to the $10 million. We were at 1.2 million, I don't remember I don't have the exact number in my head right now, but it was around 1.2 million. And so we were able to bring that into general fund without restriction. And there's ongoing reporting for that. But
Okay, and just to really stress, if we had expended all of this money and did not have these funds coming in, it would have added 10.8%.
10.8 cents.
10.8 cents to our property tax. So
Correct.
instead of 16 cents, we would have been 26.8
Correct.
without these funds. So
Yeah.
this is significant
Very
for us.
Yes. So this is where we can go into the occupancy tax in more detail. So we have a local act that gives us the authority to collect the occupancy taxes.
And that is the same as the accommodations tax.
So yes, occupancy tax is the whole picture. And then it's broken down into the county's fee, the 1%, and then the 2% beach erosion, and then the 3% is considered the accommodations tax. We kind of interchange those because the 3% is the most significant piece of it, but occupancy is the whole. So this is where I broke it down. We can
No.
use the 3% for tourism related expenditures. So, and this term per our local act means that we can use it on our criminal justice, like public safety, fire protection, public facilities and utilities, health facilities, solid waste and sewage treatment, and the control and repair of waterfront erosion. The control and repair of waterfront erosion is also out of the beach erosion fund, but you can also use it out of accommodation tax.
And
as well.
is that why we pay for the extra pickup for trash on Saturdays out of the accommodations tax?
We do,
Because it is related to tourism.
yes. Are there any questions about the occupancy or accommodation tax? No. So in a little bit more detail about the accommodation tax, this is one of the hardest to forecast. I do look back at probably 5 to 6 years on this to get trending because COVID did change accommodation tax. As you were saying earlier, it definitely spiked it. People were working remotely significantly and traveling to different places. So that happened in many tourism type places. It's definitely affected by the economy. It's also affected by the weather. So when a hurricane is coming in, a lot of people will refund the people that were coming, and you could lose an entire week or two or even a month of accommodation tax if there was a significant event that happened, and flooding. So one of the areas of caution for this is, as we had talked about before, is the shift from secondary homes becoming primary residences. And this typically generates right now between $350,000 to $400,000 for our general fund. And we do budget that conservatively as we go into the budget for the general fund as a transfer in, because it's something that we're expecting.
Now, I always thought that number was a lot higher. It was closer to $750,000. But is that because I'm confusing it with the beach erosion?
No, so that's just the transfer. The 350 to 400 is the transfer into general fund. So we have the accommodation tax fund, I believe we did budget it at 750,000,
That answers
but then
it.
expenditures come out of that.
Sure.
Yeah.
That was what was left over then at the end of the
Right.
year. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So something that is interesting, if we had taken the other revenues out, this federal, state, county, just the variable revenues that we have, if we didn't have those, we would be sitting at a 37-cent tax rate. That's a significant change from what we're at 16 cents. And then I also like to show where we are in respect to other places. At the top, you'll see that they're smaller towns that they do have limited services and they do not have police departments. And that kind of just gives you, we're sort of in the middle. We're not outrageously high. We're definitely not the lowest. And then the different revenues that people bring in other towns also change. And so that's just, we're sort of middle of the ground there.
I think you and I have had conversations before. I mean, let's look here at Sunset Beach and Ocean Isle Beach. We're at 16 cents and they're at 11 cents.
Yes.
But the truth be known, if we can gain for our accommodations tax, because of the size of our town, $750,000 in accommodations tax during the course of a fiscal year, they're getting $3.5 million
Correct.
because of the way they're structured and what larger percentage of their island, if you will, is tourists.
Yeah.
So their
So it's
revenue
based on how
stream
much
is
they
different
charge
than
and how
ours.
many there is and things like that. Yeah. And, you know, we're one of the reasons that we went for this program for compliance is to make sure that we are maximizing the other revenues that we have. Are there any questions? Is there anything that anybody wants to go over that I've gone over, or any other questions?
This
that
has
you
been
might have?
awesome.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
has been very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
Very.
you.
Do we get academic credit for this? This course?
You want me to sign off
This
for some
lesson.
CPE for you?
You've said you've never taught a class. You just did.
I actually have. I've taught
Okay.
local government at a community college.
Oh, great.
One of your people.
I actually enjoyed that.
Thank you.
One
Good
of
job.
Thank
job.
you. So if there's not any other questions, I think one of the things that we were kind of wanting is if there was any other direction from council or anything that you all had in mind or heard from citizens. I also want to say again that we have the budget suggestion form on the website. If anybody has any suggestions, citizens that would like to send it in, please send it in because we want to hear what you have to say.
You've had it up there for a couple of months. Have you gotten any
Nothing yet.
suggestions?
No,
Nothing.
No suggestions from citizens
no.
on what they want in terms of improvements or funding inside the town.
Or comments or anything. I mean, we welcome it all, but I have not received anything yet.
Okay.
Also, I do want to mention that the nonprofit applications are on the website. I sent them out to previous people that have applied by email, and I have received one back. I don't have the date in front of me, but I want to say March 4th was the date. It's that first Friday in March, if they could send them back. For anybody, any nonprofits that are looking for specific projects within Sunset Beach that they would like to apply for to Sunset Beach.
Is this information all on our website?
It is.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
Good. Thank you.
When
Yeah,
you
the packet's on the website.
so our watchers, our viewers will maybe better understand, or I may better understand. When you're talking about suggestions to be considered during the budget hearings,
Yes.
you're not just talking about, oh, we need to have another public bathroom at the beach. Could I also bring up things like, yeah, we have $150,000 in our capital reserve fund, as I've been calling it now. You know, it's in a cigar box because we
Right.
don't really have a fund yet. But that we should have considerably more than that in there because things like the police cameras that just came up the other day, you know, it's a big chunk of money. And you could make the argument that, well, that should be brought up at budget time. Well, there's going to be things within our municipality that are not even realized during budget time.
What
And-
happened this year regarding the high lift truck? It was a last minute decision based on back to flooding of the causeway. We came across with the $38,000 to have
Good
that
point.
thing.
Correct.
Good point. But it's, so you mean conceptual things as opposed to just
Yes.
fixed plant
Yeah, we
items?
want the
That's-
community to be involved. It's taxpayer dollars. So if you have opinions or suggestions or anything, there's a wealth of knowledge in our town and experience. And we welcome for comments and this is the time to do it. Like if you want to get in and have your voice heard for any type of suggestion or concern or anything like that before we're at the end and the timing, we have less time. At this point, I can bring these to you and we can discuss them and work out what the best solution is. But if we don't know the concerns or if we don't know what the suggestions are, then it's not something that I can bring forth to you.
Well, also I'll give you a concept too. And let's say 500 of our citizens said, oh my goodness, we should have mandatory recycling in this town.
Correct.
And we understand that it's going to cost 2.5 cents on our ad valorem tax per $100, but we think that that's the responsible thing to do. That would be sending a clear signal to council that we need to at least consider that during our review of the budget.
How easy of an access is it for the homeowners and residents and taxpayers to get this form?
It's on our website.
Is it easily found? Or is it buried in
There's a
one-
search box. It's under finance, but there's a search box on there where you can type in budget suggestion and it'll come up and say forms or whatever, and you can click on it.
I mean,
it's something that we can
pop-up that's
put.
great.
We can
That's-
put it on the front page too.
But this will be returned to you.
Yes.
Okay.
Could we put something together, now, talking about your blast now that goes out before meetings of planning board, town council and so on. I think you've got over 2,000 names on that, I believe. Is that something Tara could put together? Just what we've been talking about here, trying to get more taxpayer input on what we need. We can put a blast out to at least those people and
Absolutely.
say, here's what's available, here's what we need. We're just a few people up here trying to do this, and it's great to have community input.
Yeah.
Now, whether it happens or not, that's not the case, but it's so important to have community input on what the citizens want.
Bootstrapping off of what Mike Postel just said here, do we have the ability to put an attachment on there? Well, we've got that form, even if we need to simplify it to one page.
It is one page.
Okay.
Yep.
I mean, if we could do that as an attachment, because I agree with what Mike Postel just said, we may say it's on the website. I will bet you that there's a whole bunch of people don't even know what our website is, how to get on it,
I can put that on
You
there
could
too.
also put this on the same
Yes.
email, budget update based on this meeting that went out there.
Mhm.
I sent in, forwarded to some, you may not have seen it last night, a citizen on the island was concerned with the trash and recycling limitation during the summer season. Lots of the rental properties, and actually beyond that, the family properties who have their big weekends have way too much trash to go into one trash can and or one recycling can. And they leave it out, it overflows, it blows all over the place.
You can
this-
purchase additional,
Pardon?
you can purchase
Well,
additional
the
trash cans and recycling
the
cans.
suggestion was, can the town put out a requirement to do that for the rental company, any of the rental properties and things? Is there something that the town can do to kind of compel people to have enough garbage cans to handle the type of usage that they have in the house? The other side of it was in enforcement of the construction waste containers, the big trucks, that if they're not covered all the time, they're subject, like we've got 40, 45 mile an hour winds for the last 5 or 6 hours that blows stuff all over the place. If you look out in the bay now, there's lots of trash out there that's blown in.
There is.
They're looking for something to do. And so the question becomes, is there something to consider in our budget to help address this?
Okay.
And that,
Well, if you have two cans, Green for Life doesn't charge you more as a pickup, but they charge you for that extra can.
Correct.
And
to buy the can, to rent the can,
to lease it. Yeah,
to lease the can.
yes.
But
they
what
don't-
they will not do, and this is
has to be in the can.
this has caused some concerns, they will not pick up trash that is not in the cans.
Correct.
So the bags of trash that people leave on the side doesn't get picked up.
Correct.
Or, as was visible out on the island, the trash cans that are overflows, so the lid doesn't there, and the top layer of stuff all blows out, they will not pick it up. So,
And I believe that we did put that notice out. They would no longer pick
yeah,
up.
that notice went out,
Mhm.
and it was interpreted. The reactions I got was interpreted. This was a town rule, not a GFL rule, and we contacted GFL. To
That
do
actually
updates.
happens statewide.
And the
for-
residents don't, I mean, the renters don't understand the rules. So when they take out the garbage, they take the cans full, they just drop the bag next to it.
Well,
Yeah. Well, that's the renters,
Yeah.
whether it's a commercial rental property
Or
or it's a private online Airbnb, VRBO, whatever it happens to be.
We could send
That's
a
the-
letter to the rental companies requesting that they inform their property owners that rent their property to consider additional trash cans to accommodate for the
summer season.
volume
Yeah.
that renters
It-
produce.
Most
Ah,
renters
true.
have a binder that tells you what to do on checkout and things like that. But I agree with John. I think we need to, the renters are the ones that are going to violate. And so there needs to be
just,
the owners need to be proactive to be able to educate
The
their.
owners can have a when you rent things out, you get a deposit, and if the people didn't comply with their rules,
Yeah.
they can withhold the deposit. I mean, that's on them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
but
the
that's
owner's responsibility.
That ain't gonna
but that's
happen.
GFL doing that,
Yes.
not
No.
the town.
Perfect.
I think the letter to the rental agencies specifically.
does it make
Would
sense
be
to put a decal, so they put it on the lid of the garbage can, so the people are throwing it in there, look up and it says, unless it's in the can, it won't get picked up. I'm not, just another idea.
We
Mhm.
we
Well, I
were
tell
also
you
going
what
to put a
happens
thing on what you can recycle and
sometimes.
what you can't, but
They
that
don't.
went
No.
that went out the
Yep.
window. It's
Recycling company changes their policy
True.
frequently.
okay. What happens sometimes at my house, we have two pickups, Wednesday and Saturday. And you go by Wednesday and the trash can is not out. Then when you go by on Saturday, it's can't get the lid closed.
Right.
And in my first year on the council, I got together with Susan Parker and we tried to figure out how to make recycling mandatory. And she quoted a study that even if you did that, some people would put recyclables in with the regular trash and some regular trash in with the recyclables. The only program I ever saw was in, what's the town where East Carolina is?
Greenville.
Yeah.
Greenville.
Years ago, I went to a graduation party there for one of my former students, and I was surprised that she didn't have a recycle can. And she told me that everything goes in the same, and then wherever they take it and dump it, they have people there sorting it. Now, I have no idea what that would cost, but
Well, we don't dump it in the town. GFL takes and dumps it out in the county, and the recycling stuff goes to a recycling facility elsewhere in the state. and they're the ones that determine what they can take and what they can't take. You
And
know,
if you,
so
if it had to be recycled
Yeah.
at the base, price would go up dramatically.
yeah,
Because it'd have
But-
to be by hand power.
yeah, it's something that several levels above the town to handle that. But
I didn't mean
but-
to get a subtopic going here on the recycling, but it's
well,
Well,
It's important.
and that is a budget concern, because ultimately it could be part of our thing.
at someday it'll be mandatory.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of when it becomes important enough to the citizens to qualify. That's
maybe
Yeah.
when more
Bottom line.
people move here from the north, because that's
we don't allow any
big
more people from the
recycling.
north.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love.
When actual recycling becomes profitable to the nth degree, then you'll see more people recycling because the price will start going down.
Some of the local businesses do things. Fibbers for years have had that biodegradable cup, and then this 55 Bistro, they have biodegradable
Everything.
silverware. And but I asked the bartender when I was in there having a iced tea or something. Because he was putting all the cans and bottles in one can, and it looked like that. And I said, "How do you go about recycling these?" "Oh, we don't."
You don't have to. It's biodegradable. It goes into the landfill.
Well,
No, I'm talking about regular bottles and cans.
Oh, all right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So circling back around here, what the town can do right now is particularly send a letter to the rental companies, telling them to remind their owners, don't overflow, and if you're using too much, pay the
Consider
fee.
getting sick.
It comes out of, they bury that within their tax claims anyway as a property renter. And get another garbage can, or lease it from GFL, but they do that directly. They don't come to us to get another garbage can. Directly.
Also
And-
remind him of,
okay.
I'm sorry, John, also remind him of the 2 pickups per week.
Mhm.
What Charlie saw, I saw also on the island this year. And they rely on Saturday only, and it's too much for the can.
And you all extended those time periods.
This
We
year.
start now April 1
April
and go through
to
October 30.
October.
Yes.
That's important. Yeah,
Appropriately, yes.
Maybe that's a good reason to get this letter out to the rental companies.
Yeah.
And then I just wanted to run down a list of projects for you that we are in the middle of or somewhere in the process with, just so you'll know.
Just so you know.
Okay.
Let's get organized here.
We are in the conceptual plan still for the Public Works and EOC facilities out behind Fire Station 2. We are still looking at renovating Town Hall. We are looking forward to proceeding with the living shoreline off of 40th Street. We are in the beginning stages of the construction of Majestic Oak Park, with the beginning being the Partif grant application. We are on walkway number 4, finishing up walkway 4 out of an 8 walkway replacement. We are coming up to the end of the dredging project, which will then, once we get to the end of the dredging project, we will be looking to, in addition to levying the special assessment, we'll also be looking to establish a plan and the dredging maintenance fee district so that those funds can start being collected, so that when we get to the next dredging season, 5, 7, 10 years, however, it depends on the how quickly it's filling in, those funds would be there. We are also looking at the parking lot reconfiguration on the roadway. And we are working on the stormwater project for 4th Street Catchment 7. Are there any other projects that you would like us to be looking at?
Do we have anything outstanding with renovations of the community center? Or is that all up to standard, ready to go?
I think the generator was the last big ticket item, and it was installed in the last week or so. We have the sign has been made. We're waiting on the brick, and cameras are up. I think
The
everything's-
functionality side of it, I think that we've taken care of all of that. If there was any changes that people wanted to suggest or look at, I mean, it would be more cosmetic.
So we have basically no major projects going with the community center.
No.
And just for a plug, the Board of Elections will start setting up tomorrow, and our early voting will be there from Thursday through the Saturday before March 5th, I think.
So we have early voting here.
Yes, sir.
We don't have to go all the way to Bolivia.
Yes, sir.
Awesome.
Okay, and with that, so we will not do any rentals during that period
Correct.
No.
of the community center. And second, the Board of Elections does not pay to use that.
Correct.
We provide the facilities, and that's across the board pretty much in the state, right?
We had talked about that, and they do not pay any municipalities for use of the facilities for voting.
It's a benefit to our citizens to be able to vote here, so that's awesome.
I would like to, I may talk to Matt only because I'm not surprised. But I'd like to see a walkway put in between the underbridge parking lot and the park cross street, because people are walking in the road and that's dangerous. I've seen the cars hitting the brakes. If you give them a way to walk to the park for anything going on, that's a public safety issue.
One of the GSAT's plans that I think we have sent up the chain is for a sidewalk project for Shoreline Drive West, not only from the park over to that parking lot, but all the way to the Calabash River Bridge.
Well, this one here, we've got people parking over on Clubhouse Road, and they're walking the same way right past. But the Clubhouse Road is another issue. I'm not sure who owns that property, but we own one in front of the fire station. Then we have the problem under Mr. Over Maverick's job on that. That's another issue. But it's a right of way.
Yes.
So
And both of those are state right of ways, so we would have to be in conjunction with the state.
Lisa, do you want us as a group here eventually to prioritize these things, or we give their right now they have equal weighting, obviously they're projects, but do you want us to prioritize these things or look at prioritizing these things? Is that would be helpful to you or not?
We are just Dustin and Tara and I are sort of tag teaming all of these projects as different key players come in depending on where we are. When we get down to bringing you the plan for the town hall renovations for you to approve and figure out how we will fund it, in addition to the public works and EOC facilities, and the parking lot reconfiguration, those at budget time would be where you would prioritize.
So we will be seeing some of these starting in our March meetings, because this is budget time.
Right.
Okay. Are we going to see inputs on all 8 of these projects that you listed? Or, I mean, they're all underway one way, shape, or form.
right.
They've all been approved one way, shape, or form.
Right. The walkways have been budgeted. They're in this budget. So
Yeah.
that's just we're hoping that all 8 would be finished by May 30th. But we're waiting on the state. We got grant money for the 3, but we're waiting on those contracts to be released. So he can't start on those 3 until we sign those contracts. So that may delay that. Majestic Oak, there will be no additional funds requested until we go for the Partif grant money and either get the maximum amount of $500,000 or come less. We will be looking for you to budget the $594,000. That is the match of the Partif grant that you approved last month. Let's see what else. The Living Shoreline, that will be coming back to you all because that is the RCCP project that when we got to phase 4, we were not funded for. So if we move forward with that project, it would be a project that you all would fund. So that'll be coming to you. We have a meeting set up on Monday that should finalize the players, which are the affected people that are around that 40th Street walkway. The McFarlands had some questions for the agencies and for the engineers, and we are bringing all those people to the table. And as soon as that meeting is over, we'll know if we will be moving forward with that project or not.
This is the 40th Street,
This is 40th Street Living Shoreline.
Living Shoreline.
Mm-hmm. And if that project is to move forward, then I will be bringing that back to you all to go and hopefully in this budget that we're in now. But if not, it would definitely be a fall project that we would fund in the budget that you're working on now.
John?
Go ahead.
Regarding the DPW EOC adjacent to Station 2 up on Georgetown Road, the last council meeting that I remember, I wasn't on council, but I remember being discussed, the town was going back to the consultant to minimize the wetlands footprint.
Mm-hmm.
So we really won't have any idea as to what we can or can't do there until that has been, as this design has been completed.
Right.
So, all right.
And in the meantime, the survey, the environmental impact study, the protected species, all those studies are being done on the property now to determine where we can put facilities
And
and,
is that-
where we'd have to mitigate.
Are those studies budgeted already?
Yes.
Okay.
On the town hall renovation, as far as, do you know how much we've spent on engineering or architectural fees yet?
I don't have that number.
But that's already been budgeted in last year's budget.
That's in this.
In this
current
budget
budget.
right,
My
right
only
now.
question is, have we used it all?
No,
I don't think we have.
I don't know.
But that was to do several things. It wasn't just to do town hall. There was other things that were in that engineering.
Yeah, we had budgeted a 200,000
Mhm.
Yeah.
Is what I
for
think.
multiple projects.
Yeah, it wasn't
and
just town
didn't
hall.
do anything very specific because we during budget we didn't know exactly how much it was going to cost, and so we knew that there was multiple projects, and we had set that money aside for those different engineerings.
Well, as a question, I'll follow up on you, Mike. Are we going to get a proposal from staff then that has option A, B, and C for renovation of town hall, and we will then have to deliberate that up here? I know what it is.
Yeah,
Put that
you
in your
drop it
front
at my door. My other question was, is that we have A, B, and C, and I offered a question about D,
Mm-hmm.
which would be to build a separate police building, and would that be lower cost to do all the work we're doing on renovating a building of this
Mhm.
age and this type? And just ask the question, a ballpark, I mean, you don't have to get specific, because I don't want to
Mhm.
spend a lot of money on engineering or architectural fees, but anybody who's good at that would be able to take the square footage, and they've already developed enough information to do this, to be able to transfer to that.
Correct. And I have emailed the consultant
Okay.
to get that price tag.
Yeah.
Maybe less.
Yeah, and we actually had that concept when we had a piece of land ready to purchase and made an offer on that got
Yeah.
withdrawn by the seller.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Are there any other questions about anything with the budget? And
We can email you.
yes,
I'll think of one as soon as we close the meeting.
Kara, thank you.
absolutely.
That was very, very good. Wow.
Wonderful.
Anything else? Anybody else have any questions? Any issues?
Next meeting is April 9th on budget, isn't it?
No.
March.
March.
March 12th.
March
I
12th,
missed
yeah.
that one.
Yeah.
It's right.
Yeah.
I know where it's at. How did I miss it in my phone?
And
Any other
Katie gave
discussion?
you all the budget calendar that
Yes.
you adopted in January. It's attached to this agenda just as a reminder.
Yep,
for
I
when
got
the
it.
dates are.
9 o'clock. Okay.
All right.
Okay. May I have a motion to close the meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're closed.